Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the first meeting of 2026 for Diamond Valley Writers Guild. It's really good to see some fresh faces, some familiar faces. I hope everyone got recharged over the 2-month hiatus that we do. Do that so you can recharge and so we can recharge as well. The holiday season tends to be busy for everybody, so it's nice to come back fresh to January and be ready to write. So first off, if you are on Zoom, please mute your mic. At some point, there will be question and answers, plenty of time for you to unmute and talk to the group as we go through our agenda today. So we're going to start this off with an up-to-date from Kevin Kindle up in Canada. He is our vice president and also our webmaster. Kevin, do you have any updates for us?
So over the break, we encountered our very first renewal season with the new subscription system on the website, and it didn't go as well as planned. There's a little tag that is very poorly labeled in Wix that was preventing people from renewing until their subscriptions actually expired. And I managed to sort that out, but it was literally the very end of December by the time I sorted that out. By the way, even if you pay by cash, check, whatever, by going directly through the PayPal account or giving money to the staff there at the meeting, it still gets marked as a subscription in the website, which sends out automatic emails when your subscription is coming up for renewal and all that kind of stuff. So I found out what emails go out now and how they get edited. So I've changed some of the wording to be a little more aesthetic and not talk about plans because they're actually memberships. It's based on what most people do with subscriptions for websites. Other than that, I have changed the wording on several of the pages of the website, especially the Join Renew page, to better explain the fact that because we work on calendar year versus a yearly subscription, when you purchase a membership on the website, it only shows us 2 months, and then I manually extend you to December 31st of the year. And I put a little link in there that you can actually click on to see the status of your membership. So you can actually see when the expiry date of your membership actually is. And it's all on the Join Renew page. Otherwise, the only other thing that's changed is in various discussions with Wix, the part that I had with the member profiles being linked to your member books page, that was tied to the forum system, which Wix has completely discontinued, which is why everything broke. So that is, the member profiles are still good and they're still valid. But what we're going to have to do is I'm coming up with some different ways for people to interact with the website, because the more you interact with the website, either comments on meetings or I'm looking at possibly doing some kind of a writing prompt. The more you interact with the website, the more your member profile will be available to view, and it can link your books, your social medias, everything. So that's pretty much where that's going. And other than that, it's where the website's getting busier and people are purchasing memberships. Back to you, Michelle.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate you. It's a lot of work managing the website. So hats off to him. He's been just doing a fabulous job with that. One thing, up at the upper right-hand corner on the main page of the website, you can see all the links for social media. We have a Facebook page, a Facebook group. We have X, we have Instagram. So there's a lot of places that you can engage with the Guild and find out what's going on. There's also a place there to click on Cafe Press. Cafe Press, if you see some of the merch I put out here today, you can buy stuff that's branded, and that's kind of cool. We get a little bit, we don't get a lot of money off of it, but we know people like branded stuff, so we set up a Cafe Press account for members to be able to get branded t-shirts and bags and whatever they want. So shout outs, Lynette, you want to give us an update on shout outs?
Hey, good morning and Happy New Year, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me. I think we're good. Good. All right. So one of the great perks we have for being a member, and membership is cheap. Believe me, I belong to a couple of guilds, and this is the best value for your dollar. One of our perks is monthly shout outs. And what does that mean? That means if you have a book that just came out, if you have a blog, if you have a celebration, a book signing, anything writing related that's exciting and happening in your life, we want to know about it and we want to tell our friends. So usually I send out an email around the 5th of the month reminding you to send me a copy of your cover, a purchase link, and a short summary. And then around the 20th of the month, we send it out to our entire mailing list. And people, we have over 500 people in our mailing list. So that's a lot of free advertisement. And we want to celebrate with you. So send that in to the Guild email. And Kevin's got his hand up. Yeah, Kevin. Yeah, unmute, buddy. There you go.
With you brought up something I was going to mention. With us breaking the 500 mark on our mailing list, it runs into some problems that we were sending with our old Google Mail program. So at the bottom of every web page on the website, there is now a newsletter sign up that goes to our new newsletter system that we're moving to. So if you would like to get to continue getting the shout outs and stuff like that, please go down to the newsletter sign up at the bottom of the webpage and add your email to the new newsletter that we're going to start using here in the next little bit.
So stay up to date and let's celebrate each other's writing adventures and successes. So back to you, Michelle.
Thank you, Lynette. And as it gets a little closer to transitioning to this new platform for newsletters and shout outs and information, we will send out an email to everybody saying, hey, click here so you can add yourself to the mailing list. But we're just not quite there. We're in the transition stage. So it's a little not quite ready, I guess is the best way to put it. Next, 2026 membership renewal and benefits. Jessica, our treasurer.
Good morning, everybody. Hope everyone's doing well. It's been a long break, obviously, but it is renewal season. This season and tax season and the off season is always busy for me. So, but now you get to renew for the year for 2026. It is $25 right now. We are going to be raising the prices come March 1st to, hold on to your pants, $30 per year. I know, I'm sorry, but as the cost of everything else goes up, the cost of keeping the system running also goes up. So we're going to be increasing to $30 come March 1st. However, if you pay now, today, or in February, or over PayPal, you lock in that $25 for the rest of the year. So it really is a good idea to renew in January or February, because you get some really cool perks. Come April, we have our poetry reading, and in October, we have our prose reading. If you would like to submit and participate in those, you do have to be a member. If you would like to participate in Guild publications, if you see, we have a really pretty book sitting over there with many members who contributed wonderful stories. If you want to be in the next one, which there might be a next one. If you would like to be in the next one, you do have to be a member in order to submit and be considered and published. The other thing is, if you think what we do up here talking at you is so cool and you're like, I want to talk at people who can't run away, you can also run for a board position. You have to be a member in good standing in order to run. We have elections every October for different positions. Like just this past October, Michelle and I were reelected, and then it come this October, Kevin, Lynette, and Sophia's positions will be up for election. So if you want to help support the Guild in a more than financial capacity, you want to actually volunteer to be a board member, you can do that as a member of the Guild. You can also participate in shout-outs, which is the cool email blast that you get every month about recent successes from our membership. So it's going to be $25 until March 1st, then it goes up to $30. It's still $15 for college students and still $10 for high school. If you want to become a member, you can either sign up through the website, send it directly through PayPal to dvwritersguild@gmail.com. You can also mail the check through snail mail to P.O. Box 1154, Hemet, California, 92546, or I'll be sitting right back there and you can hand me a big wad of cash or a check, either one. I don't take love and affection, unfortunately. They said I can't do that anymore. So please do consider supporting the Guild, and I hope you all become members again, or for the first time. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Being treasurer, Being treasurer is a big job. Yes, we do have to file tax returns with the IRS. So, it's just coming into the time of year where every day she's doing something for the Guild. So thank you again. Another round of applause for all of our volunteers, Kevin, Lynette, Jessica. We've got our Zoom team in the back. We've got Aiden, Sophia, and we have Q, and we have Liam back there, who is running most of the board stuff. And we couldn't do this without the volunteer tech team, which leads me into volunteers. We're always looking for volunteers. We have a great group of people that show up at 8:15 once a month and help us. We dance around and we hook up wires and set everything up, because we walk into this room at 8:15, it doesn't look like this. To get it this way, we need bodies. We need people. If you want to volunteer for that or the teardown, we'd love to have it. Also looking for volunteers for accountability groups. If you would like to run some sort of a accountability group, such as a National Novel Writing Month. We didn't do it this last November, but we'd like to always have a group going when you hit October. Or if you've got maybe a children's lit or a romance writers or a memoir writers, and you'd like to form an accountability group, we'd love to help you guys get that going. And tips, we're always looking for writing tips and tech tips. If you know something no one else does about writing or about technical things that impact a writer, 3 to 5 minute tips. We're always looking for volunteers to get up here and do that for us once a month. Now we're going to move into my favorite part, which is member successes. So I love this part because this is when the members get to tell us what they did. Maybe they submitted for the first time to a magazine, a short story. Maybe they got something published. Maybe they got accepted on something. Maybe they just finished a project. So if you have a success, whether you are a member or just a guest participating who has not yet paid your membership, we'd love to hear from you to hear what's going on. I'm going to start because, as we mentioned, we did have an anthology come out in November, and there are some books over there. I did bring some that we can sell if you're interested in the room to buy them if you haven't been able to order them. They're on Barnes & Noble, Amazon, everywhere, any retailer. You can get our book. And go to the website, click on the link, and it'll take you to any place you want to buy it. If you want to do it online, it's ebook and paperback right now. We're working on the hardcover. That's been a little challenging. Hopefully that'll come out soon. So we're excited. That was our first anthology, and that was our success as a guild. Give yourselves a round of applause on that. Took a lot of effort from a lot of people, contributors and editors and readers and proofreaders, and it goes on. And Kevin, he picked up the slack at the end and got everything out and published. So it's been a real fun thing. Okay, let's start with Zoom. Anybody on Zoom, have you had a success of any kind since last November or last October's meeting? Anybody want to unmute? Just unmute and talk. Okay, go ahead, John.
Yeah, hi everybody. I apologize. I'm teaching golf class to kids, so I couldn't get to the meeting. But yeah, since the last meeting, I've actually started a YouTube channel, and it's all centered around my literature. And I've got probably about 30 videos I've dropped on YouTube. I put I put it in the chat box, but I don't have the link because I'm actually mobile. I'm in my car, but later you can just put John McRearty at YouTube. But yeah, I'm getting a lot of hits, a couple thousand hits, and I've I've finished 2 golf books since we last spoke, and I'm submitting those to traditional publishers. So I've been busy.
Congratulations. Let's give him a round of applause. So John, email the guild with the link to your YouTube, and we'll put it on the shout out. Okay?
Right on. Thanks.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Anybody in the room have a success? Anybody? If you do, come up to the mic. Kay, come on up here to the mic, and you're on deck if you're on Zoom. Okay. Here, Kay.
In November, the Napa Valley branch of the California Writers Club sponsored a writing contest, and it was for essays, so it was true life stories. The prompt was The Path Not Taken. And I don't know if the guild sent out the link or if California Writers Club, of which I'm still a member, sent out the link, but I saw the link. I ruminated on the link. I ruminated on all the times in my life that I had taken a different path and all the 1,000 things that I could write. I picked one, I wrote it, I sent it in, I won first place. I won $100. That was nice. When I got the email when they announced the winners, they're like, yeah, here's the winner, blah, blah, blah. We had 40 entries. So that took me back a little bit because California Writers Club has, the last I looked, about 13 branches in Northern and Southern California. There are hundreds and hundreds of members, and out of all those members, 40 people submitted. I say that to poke you a little bit that when you get these little emails that say, hey, so-and-so, they're having a contest for this and this and this, think about it for a minute and think about entering. Also in November, I heard from Chicken Soup for the Soul. A year ago, I wrote an essay on grandmothers. It was actually about my mom being a grandmother to my grandkids. So they accepted my piece. That book comes out in March. That's a check for $250. That essay took me about an hour to write. Right now, just sort of dovetailing about the anthology because you all enjoyed writing about cats and dogs and other pets. Chicken Soup has a call out for Best Cat Ever book and Best Dog Ever book. So if you can write about between 800 and 1,000 words about the best cat ever or the best dog ever, and they have to be true life stories. It can't be as told to. They're not hard to do. If you need a little coaching, see me. I've done Chicken Soup before. But when we have these opportunities, take them. You might get checks. Okay, thanks.
Congratulations, Kay. You were busy over the break, weren't you? Anybody on Zoom with a success they would like to share with the group? Okay, I see Karen. Go ahead, Karen.
I think I'm unmuted. Yeah. I will keep singing the praises of Substack for anyone who wants to be published on a regular basis. You have no editor. You just put your articles or your compositions, whatever you do. And it's so much fun to know that people will subscribe to read what you put up there every week or every month, however often you want to do it. And I was just looking at my dashboard on my Substack, and 5,500 people have read my stories. Isn't that exciting? I mean, and it's so easy to do. It doesn't cost you anything. So I just keep encouraging writers to put their things on there, and it's so much fun to get comments back from your readers. So there you have it, my pitch for Substack.
Excellent. One of our resident Substack specialists is Karen. Congratulations, Karen. Anyone else in the room with a success that they've had? Come on up, Alvin. While he's walking up, I'm going to piggyback a little bit on what Kay said. I also saw an open call for a story for an anthology for a publishing company, an actual, paying gig, and my story was accepted in the Villains Club anthology, which is supposed to come out in March or February, March, they said. I'm not sure. Finally got the cover reveal, but I was very, very excited because I'm in there with two of my heroes, personal heroes. Two speakers that have been here, Dennis Crosby. One of his stories accepted, and Jonathan Mayberry, who will be our speaker next month. He's a New York Times bestseller, and so I'll be in the anthology with two of my kind of writing guru heroes. So that's kind of exciting. Come on around here, Alvin. And I got a check for $50. So yeah, that's nice.
Hey, question for Karen. Can you put the link to that organization in the chat box, please?
What organization are you talking about, John?
The one she just spoke of. Substack or Subscript?
Substack? Okay, we'll try to see what we can do. Okay, go ahead, Al.
In November, I finished my, I don't have NaNoWriMo anymore, but I keep track of my own words, and I committed myself to writing a historical novel in November. So I finished it, a novel about the Seminole Wars in Florida, and I followed it up with a sequel story that took place 10 years after the events in my novel. And then in December, this year I decided to write a poem a day between December 1st and 25th. And I decided, well, I'll take on the Old Testament because I hadn't done anything in there for 4 years. So I actually ended up writing 38 poems between January 1st and the 25th, and 4 poems about the New Testament snuck in there, so it's actually 42, and then some other poems on the side. So I don't know how I do it. I'm not sure, but I can't do it on my own. If the Spirit isn't directing me, I can't do anything really. So that's my challenge every December, to write a series of stories, at least 10 stories, inspirational stories, or at least a poem a day. And I've done that every year for 6 years now.
Congratulations. Wow, lots of writing going on out there. That's fabulous. By the way, Alban does have a poem in the anthology. Kay has a poem, an amazing poem in the anthology. Karen, who just spoke, she has a story in the anthology. So all these people read their stories. Is there anyone else on Zoom who has a success that they would like to share? I see Marco. Marco, I know what yours is. I'm excited for you. Go ahead. Marco's in Utah, by the way.
Yeah, just almost state next door. Anyway, so last month I finished the second draft of my first book ever, and it only took me 18 months this time, which is a lot faster than the first draft. So yeah, that's a big, huge accomplishment for me, because I've been wanting to write my own stories for pretty much my whole life, and it wasn't until 2019 I finally started my endeavors after a lot of life stuff, and it still took me a while because, you know, it's my first thing ever, and I was still beginning to learn the craft of storytelling. So for me, it's a huge deal that I got to finish this draft in under 2 years. So now I'm spending this month researching and planning another book I'm gonna start writing next month, and see if I can try and finish it within a year, 13, 15 months. Just to, because I realize I have been getting faster at writing now that I've gotten some skin in the game, and I'm able to process my ideas faster. So, and also I've had the idea for this book in my head for a bit now, so I'm excited to finally explore and see what it ends up being. So
congratulations, Marco. That's a huge accomplishment. Finishing the first draft of a book is huge, huge, huge. Anyone else who has something that they want to? Oh, come on up. We have somebody in the room here. Go ahead. Is there anybody on Zoom? Be ready to unmute.
Hi, my name is Eileen Betts, and I've been writing short memoir stories from when I was 12 years old that are about the newspaper. I was a newspaper girl, and I had been doing it during the Vietnam War. So I had written experiences from delivering the papers and seeing vets and their reactions with a 12-year-old girl, and not really understanding what they went through. And I used to sit on their steps, and they used to tell me their stories. I also wrote a lot of family stories that had to do with the Vietnam War that helped me understand. I didn't really do any research. I just went for it, And then I wrote stories about, like, my family, a lot about, struggling, and about my dad. It's a lot of stories about my relationship with my father. And I hit 40 stories this December something. So I hit 40 stories, and that to me is really good. Thank you.
By the way, Eileen has an adorable flash memoir piece. It's amusing in the anthology as well. Keep plugging the anthology because it's really, really good. Eileen told me something before the meeting today that she has a friend who has a doctorate in English, in English literature, who read the anthology and said, what did she say? She said it was excellent. So we have, and she loved the cover. So we've had some outside more positive feedback from people who have a little bit of street cred, which is cool. Okay, I see Letitia. Do you want?
Yes. Hi. I have I guess a lot of things going on. I was published by Escondido Art Partnership Summation Publication, and that was the end of last year. I think it's almost ready now. I was also published for poetry on both in San Diego Arts Partnership. And now that I am back home, which it really doesn't matter, I'm applying for low residency in writing for young readers at the University of San Francisco. That's USF. And so I'm almost done with the application. I hope to have it done today or tomorrow. And I already talked to the program director, and it just sounds really exciting and a way to go for me right now. I'm also looking for other children's authors because we're doing an anthology and I want to include your book in there. I will put my email in the chat. That's about it, I think. Thank you.
And congratulations, Letitia. That's great.
Thank you.
And if there's anybody in the room interested in talking to her about the anthology for children that she's working on, just email the Guild or catch me and we'll make sure that you connect. Okay? Wendy, iPad, I see. Go ahead, Wendy. Unmute, Wendy? If you're there. Oh,
I'm here, but I just sent something to clap. I didn't have anything to specifically share. I'm so sorry.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
I thought it was a hand raise. And there was somebody else, though, in the gallery that had their hand raised, I believe. Anybody else? Oh, yep, Lori. Go ahead, Lori.
Yes, it's so fun to be here. I love listening to everybody's accomplishments because being in the publishing business, working with authors, finishing anything is sometimes like a big challenge. My first book took me 35 years to write, so I admire anybody that can do it in less than 35 years. Of course, it only took me 3 months to get my second one out, but I got better. And a month to get the third one out, which actually paid me a whole lot more money than anything else I've done. But I have done a lot of things in this last few months, but the things that I'm most proud of is finishing first drafts with several of the authors that work with me. And the person that's talking about Vietnam War stories, I'd really like to talk to you. I am working on one with a gentleman who's if you know anything about Vietnam, and I know a lot of you do, when the soldiers came back, they were not treated very kindly. And this particular author didn't say a word about being in one of the most deadly battles ever for 10 years after he got back. So writing a book with someone like that to get their story out is incredible. But I think the thing that I'm most proud of is I have now actually published for other people over 40 books within my publishing company, and I have about 5 that are just getting ready to go again. And so I always let them know about this group and other groups. And one thing that you can do if your book's already published, or even if it's not, there's an organization, it's a newspaper actually, called the San Diego Voyager. And if you need a referral for them, if you have a story about what you do or how you want to do it or whatever that might be worthy for their publication, it's really fun to be a part of it. I had an article in I think it was 2016, and I'm getting ready to do another one. And I've referred quite a few people there because it's just so fun to see yourself in a publication like that. So if you need any information on that, just reach out to me, and I'd love to help you with that too.
Thank you, Lori. I appreciate you. Put your email in the chat.
Will do.
Okay, is there any last call for anyone who has a success they would like to share? I don't know if I can see everybody on the screen or not. So if you're there, unmute. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody. Okay, one last note is that there are other groups like ours around. Tomorrow is Temecula Valley Writers and Illustrators Trond. He's from Temecula, and he's a member of that group as well as our group. And they do other things. And who is the speaker? Isn't it Erin? I see Erin. So Erin is on the Zoom today, but she's the speaker at Temecula Valley tomorrow at 11 o'clock down at City Hall offices. If you're interested, talk to Trond after the meeting or email us or whatever. Also, California Writers Club, they meet on the fourth Saturday, still in Ontario, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And you can find them, Inland Empire California Writers Club. And then the first Sunday of the month, down in San Diego at Mysterious Galaxy Books, that's focused more on the business side of publishing and writing. But the Writers Coffee House, which is kind of guided, facilitated by Jonathan Mayberry and a few other notables, and that's open to any writer who is interested at noon to 3, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a couple months since I've been down there. Anyway, so there's a lot of resources in Southern California if you're interested in hooking into writer communities. We're just glad you're here. So with that, we are going to skip the writer's tip this month and postpone it to next month because we're a little longer than I anticipated. So unfortunately, you'll have to wait for the writer's tip on how to write gestures next month. But in the meantime, we're going to move right to our guest speaker to give her plenty of time. And I'm going to introduce Lynette Tucker, who is our member-at-large board of directors, who is the member liaison. If you have any questions about membership as well as concerns, that she's the person to complain to. But she's going to introduce our guest speaker, and I'm turning it over to Lynette. If you could hold your questions until specific times, and we'll ask for questions during the presentation. And does everyone have a handout in the room? Okay, we might want to put the handout link in the chat. Thank you. Go ahead, Lynette.
Everybody, I got the privilege of hearing Jana speak at the Writers Cantina last summer, and I took away a lot of tips and notes, and then she had a handout, which was awesome. Jana entered the world of publishing in the mid-90s, and she's never looked back. She's worked as a journalist, a fiction writer, technical writer, editor, presenter, author coach, course creator, conference committee member, and a host of other positions. She's assisted in the creation of best-selling and award-winning novels in the self-publishing space, as well as working as an editor with small presses and as an acceptance editor for Book Cave, which is a book promotion company. She has over 20 books published across 3 pen names, as well as a host of newspaper articles, over 100 articles with the Deseret News alone, and she has award-winning anthology tales. Gianna runs Opal Kingdom Press, which is a small press, and she adores helping other creators reach their goals. Her amazing family and her fuzzy sidekicks provide her with support, inspiration, and amusement, sometimes not always in that order. So sit back and get ready to learn some great tips and stuff from Jana Brown.
Hey, fantastic. Thank you so much. Are we hearing everything okay in the stream room? We're happy? Marvelous. Okay, as Lynette said, I'm Janet S. Brown. I have been at this for a very, very, very long time. I have to adjust that. I love it when you have to go in and adjust your bio because you have more things that have published. So I just crossed 30. So I have 30 books published under 3 pen names, and there's a 4th pen name that's in the works. Ask me about that later. That pen names are a whole thing. But so I love working with authors. I love working in the industry, and I've been doing it for a long time. And as you heard, I have both technical sides and also a very strong fiction side. And we put all of those together when we're going to talk about the subject of today, which is self-editing your manuscript. This is one of those steps that I think is one of the most important things that needs to be done. And yet a lot of authors either don't know that they should or don't know where to begin. And so I'm going to share a slideshow, and that'll put me off in the corner. That's okay. As long as you can hear me, we'll be fine. So we'll click on all the things. I need the host to allow me to share. And then I can click on all the things. Here we go. We have sharing. I love it when I upload share. And we will hit the slideshow. All right, what are we doing here? Come on, slideshow. Thank you. From beginning. All right, there we go. Lynette, can you see the slideshow at this point? Marvelous. Okay, I call this presentation Self-Editing, Cutting Your 10%. That 10% comes from Stephen King, who in his book on writing talked about, he figures that when he's doing his self-editing, he tends to write a book, and then he tends to go back and cut out about 10% of it. Now, the 10% rule will not apply to everyone, but it will apply to most writers. You do get some writers, and I'm one of these, so I had to learn to train myself a little bit differently, who just sketch out the bones of something, and their first self-editing pass is actually packing meat on, but then they do another pass, and after they pack that meat on, they do go in and trim. So almost always, even if you start with a bones up writing, you will go through a pass where you need to cut stuff off, because sometimes it's not because it's too much stuff, but maybe it's just the wrong stuff. So we do kind of stick with this idea of you're going to end up, by the time you put everything in place, going back through on that last self-edit before it goes to a pro, you're going to cut about 10%, give or take. So we're going to talk about self-editing, ways to put on a new hat and not make your editor, agent, reader, or publisher sad. We try very hard not to make anybody sad in this industry. So I like hats. I'm very, very fond of hats of all different shapes and sizes. And when I go to approach something that I'm going to self-edit, I like to think about the different kinds of hats that I'm going to be wearing. These hats echo what happens when you go to a professional editor. And self-editing does not replace a professional editor. We will talk about that a little bit more as we get going, but just to put that out there. But you do follow in your own self-editing the same processes that I, as a professional editor, would be applying to your manuscript. And that makes a lot of sense, because if I'm going to go through that process, you want to go through that process first. And that makes it so it's going to be easier for me to work if you've already done your part. So the first hat that we're going to put on is our developmental hat. This is also sometimes called a substantive hat or a structural hat. This is the big picture hat. This is all about what is going on a big level when it comes to your book. And so we're going to start with things like story structure. If you're thinking about building a house or putting something together, this is making sure you've got a strong foundation. Things are holding together, because it doesn't matter if you've got great art to hang on the walls of your story house. If you don't have a foundation to put them on, then it's just all falls inside, right? So same kind of thing. We want to start with, what is the structure of your story? Is it holding together? When you're talking about nonfiction, what is the pain point? What is the thing that you're trying to solve for somebody? And how do you have that thesis lined up with supporting structure? So you want that to work, whether you're going fiction or nonfiction, or doing creative nonfiction, which is where a lot of your essays and that kind of thing come in together, because you're still going to say, I want to tell stories about the Vietnam War. Well, how am I going to structure that? How am I going to put it together so that it flows in a way that's going to make sense and is going to be engaging for the reader? So no matter what kind of story you're writing, what kind of writing you're working on, you need to start with the structure. So the kinds of things you want to think about as you're looking at story structure. The first thing is the hook. And no matter what you're writing, you need a hook. You need a reason that people want to read this. Because I can tell you, I spend too much time on social media, as we all do. And there's a lot of things out there that are really, really boring. And you just kind of skim past it and go, no, there's nothing in here for me. When you get those other things, and sometimes they can get a little bit clickbaity, where they're pulling us in for all the wrong reasons. But you have something that has a hook that speaks to you. It says, this is a thing that I really, really want to dive into. And with your story, with your manuscript, you need that hook in there. What is the promise of this story that's going to hook somebody in and say, all right, I must read more? So if we talk about the best cat ever.
Jana, we think that maybe you have the wrong screen up. on your presentation. It's the presenter's view, not the actual presentation.
Oh, what are you getting? That's fun. All right. So you're seeing all sorts of neat stuff. That's nifty. Let me close this and I will reshare it. That's fun.
Jen,
my sweet
two
husband,
monitors, it's going to be sharing on the off monitor.
Yeah, I just barely got the whole 2 monitors thing, and
that's
it was my
little
husband's
trick
Christmas
that if you don't know
present to me.
2 monitors, you're not.
All right, let's try this again. I'm glad that you mentioned it because. All right, are you seeing the right one now?
No, it's still on the presenter's view.
Well, use something.
You might have to.
Does that work?
Yes.
Aha! I win.
Perfect.
Sorry to interrupt. Go on.
Oh, no, I'm glad you did because I don't want to go through and give you all the wrong things. All right, so now you see a developmental hat. Is that correct? Okay, Lynette is nodding. So, all right, so we're talking about hooks. Does that make sense? Good. All right. I see nodding, so I'm going to keep moving along. One of these days, I'm going to figure out all these extra monitors. My husband is certain that I need like 12 of them. He must make me, this, and he's wonderful, but he wants to make me this office of great technological wonder. And I'm like, technological, but really I just need a screen in front of me and a copy of Word so I can put my stuff in it. But that's okay. So we're working here. So we're talking about hooks. We're talking about, what is it that you're going to put that hook in there that says, why is your story about the best cat ever something that somebody wants to read versus somebody else's story about the best cat ever? And the uniqueness that's in your hook is what's going to catch your readers. And in hooks, we need a combination of things because people will say, well, I want to do something so unique, and that's going to draw everybody in. Uniqueness is nice, but sometimes uniqueness can be so strange that it's actually off-putting. So we want to think about in our hook, familiar with the different. And we think about that a lot in writing in general, because you want to appeal to the audience and say, what is it that we have in common? But then what is my particular twist on it? So I call this the Disney World theory. I go back to Disney World as often as our budget will let us. And I have people go, why? It's the same. And it's not. And I'm like, well, that's not true. I go because there are certain things that I want to experience there. I wish to eat Mickey Mouse waffles. They make me happy. I realize they're just waffles in a different shape, but they still make me happy, and I want to eat them in Florida. And that's that familiar thing. We always start with the Mickey Mouse waffles. That's the familiar thing. But then what Disney does well is there's always something new that I haven't seen. And it can be a garden walk. It can be a new food. It can be something else. So the familiar takes me there, and the difference keeps me coming back. So when we're thinking about our hooks and our structure, we want to have that ability to say, yeah, here's what's going to bring you in. Here's something that's a little familiar. We all love cats or we all love dogs or whatever. That's familiar. But here's what's different about mine. And the thing that's going to keep you coming back to my writing is that familiar with different. Okay. So we do that with our hooks. We do that with the way we structure our books. Then we get into order of events. We want to make sure that it makes sense. Because even sometimes you will choose to tell a story out of order, but it still has to make sense because readers who are bored or confused stop reading. Boredom and confusion are the top 2 things you can do to make a reader check out and decide that they are not reading you anymore. So if you're going to do something that's odd with your order of events, you have to get them to trust you to understand that you are going to come back and it is going to go back into a flow and they will understand everything. This comes up with things like flashbacks, with we're going to tell a story within a story, the play within the play, all that kind of stuff. You can totally do it, but make sure you think through that order of events and that it is something you're not going to lose your reader out of confusion. We want to look at your pacing. Your pacing is the ups and the downs. It's the emotional parts of a story or the interesting parts of a nonfiction narrative that all connect everything together. And if we spend too much time on one thing and not enough time on something else, our pacing will seem slow. In the same way that if we go through it and everything is fast, that gives you very, very quick pacing. Sometimes you want that. So, for example, if you're writing a fight scene, whether it's in a thriller or whether it's in a fantasy epic, with fight scenes, you do things like taking sentence structure and making it shorter and punchier, shorter chapters, things like that, because shorter makes people read faster and it feels faster. Longer sentences, more elongated things, they're slower. They make you think about the structure. They have a flow to them. And as you're doing all of that, you're going to get that same kind of thing. So pacing is those ups and downs. And generally, we don't want anything to be all the same because all the same gets boring. So we want those rises and those falls. And that's what makes a narrative something that's really fun to read. So you want to look at that pacing and make sure you're neither breathless nor bored. Then we want to look at plot arcs. These can also be logical arcs. Again, when you're looking at, if I'm writing a thing about how to do high altitude baking, I live in Utah, you have to adjust your recipes. So if I write a book about that, the logical arc there is going to be, well, I'm going to do an introduction to the idea, and then maybe I'm going to break it down by cookies, baking powder, biscuits, bread, et cetera, et cetera. How am I going to structure that logical arc so it draws people through the book or through the book? Now, character arcs, this is generally more specific to creative nonfiction or fiction. But character arcs, we want our characters to grow and to change. Characters who do not change at all are boring. Okay? And we do get some characters who don't make big changes. For example, James Bond is pretty much the same guy all the time. And that's why we watch him and read him. We don't expect him to undergo great changes. We want him to have fancy cars, things that explode, perfect hair, and he always gets the girl. And that's what we expect out of him. And he's supposed to do that, and that's okay. So he doesn't change a lot, but even within the narrative, he does interesting things. So we want to look at those arcs and still say, does the narrative move? Does he move through things? Does he learn new things? That can be part of his growth arc, even if his character itself doesn't change a lot from short story to short story or movie to movie. You want to look at the relationships. This is not just romantic relationships, though those are really, really important. Relationships is part of what makes us human. And when we're reading something, we want that connection because the connection helps us to go, oh, well, if that cat and that dog are attached and they really love each other, that tells us something. And we feel something when we read that short story about the cat and the dog that love each other. I have a dog, and I got my dog 2 kittens last year. And she thinks they are the most wonderful things on the face of the planet. We could not have made her happier except for giving her my daughter. You know, she loves all of these things. Now, when I tell you that, you immediately start to think certain things about that story, about this dog and these 2 cats and that kind of thing, because they're connected. So relationships can be romantic. They can be family relationships where you get all sorts of fantastic dynamics. They can be relationships within a business. They can be relationships with sometimes a person and a thing. If you're a Supernatural fan, the things that we know that Dean loves is he loves his brother, he loves his baby in the part of the Impala, and he loves pie. And all of those things are very important to who Dean is as a character and what motivates him and why he does what he does. And relationships connect to the next one, which is that motivation. We want to feel like they do things that make sense. We want to feel like they do things where we go, oh, yes, I understand why they are doing this. Because if you have someone in a thriller who comes on the screen and just shoots somebody for no reason, you're stuck going, okay, I need a motivation here. Why are they doing this? What is going on? That asks those questions. And we want the motivations to make sense. Because if you go in and you say, oh, so-and-so does this, they go to the store. Well, why are they the ones going to the store if they've never gone to the store before and if they're 3 years old? You know, what's the motivation of a 3-year-old to go to the store? If it doesn't exist, it doesn't make sense, and it breaks the logic in our heads as readers. And so readers will stop because they go, that doesn't seem like it's in character for the person that we're talking about. So we want to make sure those character arcs are in there and that they're very strong and that people connect to those characters because that's going to bring them through. There are a number of mistakes you can make in structure, that you can make typos, that you can do that kind of thing. If you have characters and situations that people love, they will forgive a host of other things. Now, we'd like to take care of the host of other things too, let's be honest, but They will forgive you a lot more if there's somebody who they really, really want to see succeed, or they really, really, really want to see fail. So, sometimes a negative motivation for a reader is just as strong as a positive one. Then we want to think about our promises and our tone. Because again, we're trying to reach those reader expectations so that we can keep them in while bringing them what is uniquely our own. Okay, so promises is, this can be, what we call Chekhov's gun, which we'll talk about a little bit more. But if you hang a gun on the mantle, they expect that the gun will be fired by the end of Act 1. This comes from plays. Chekhov was a Russian play writer. And he coined this idea that if you set something in motion, you have to fulfill that promise, or your reader finishes the book, the essay, whatever, unsatisfied. So if I tell you, I'm going to tell you about my dog and my 2 cats, and then I proceed to tell you a story about a fish, they're going to go, but what about the dog and the 2 cats? That's what got me into this. You promised me to tell me about a dog and 2 cats. I don't care about the fish, even if the fish is a really great story. So you have to make sure that promises are fulfilled, that if you say, we're going to solve this mystery, by the end, they need to have solutions to the mystery. Now, when we're talking about series, and we do have to think about this as we do structure, sometimes we don't fulfill all the promises in book 1. But you should know what are the promises and when will they be fulfilled. So maybe you're not going to defeat the final big bad until book 5. That means in book 1, there has to be some defeating and some learning. And in book 2, there has to be defeating and learning. And we move that up until book 5 fulfills that series promise that says the bad guy will be defeated by the end. So those are promises that we make to the readers we go through. And anytime you're reading a book and you get to the end, you're just not satisfied. It's just like, well, it was good, but we didn't understand this and that. Those are generally what we call unfulfilled promises. And we hate it when people don't fulfill their promises because we're left dissatisfied. And it's really hard to move a reader to another book or within your series if they finish one book and they're not satisfied and there's not enough solutions that they're still curious. Instead, they're just upset. Tone is also important because this will tell you, what kind of audience is right for you, is right for your book. Sometimes I want something that is happy and light and all of these things. And if I'm reading along and it's happy and it's light, and then suddenly you throw in a funeral scene, you're changing the tone so significantly that if I don't know that that's coming, it's really going to just sock you and it's going to cause a disconnect with the reader. And again, that's that boredom or confusion. Very often readers will put things down. So they need to understand if you say something's going to be a dark romance, that's a very different expectation than a rom-com. So we want to make sure that our tone aligns with the expectations so that our reader knows what they're getting. And if we change tone through a book or through a series, we need to do it in steps so the reader will come along with us, because that can happen. One of my favorite total girl movie here, guys, but I love the old Still Magnolias with Dolly Parton and with Julia and Sally Fields. It's a wonderful movie. And it starts very, very light. Having a wedding, we have these friends, they're doing all these things together, they're very, very funny. And as we go through, we see that change in tone where it becomes more serious because we find out that in our light friendship, there's health problems. There's problems with their spouses. There's all these other things going on in their lives. And then by the end, we have, spoiler alert, there's a funeral and there's a really, really emotional, poignant moments of how do you deal with loss? But because they walk us through starting from here and the tone doesn't immediately go down, we don't start with wedding and then she's dead. We don't do that. That's too fast of a tone shift for most readers or most viewers. And so you have to say, well, maybe I am going to take them to these darker places and then take them back to something light, take them back to the phrase life goes on. But you have to take them through that gently. And so you've got to watch your tone to say, as I consistently move through, is this a journey that readers will come on with me? All right. So I can pause there and see, are there any questions with what this big developmental structure kind of had is?
Okay. Any questions in the room? Anyone have any questions? Okay. Eileen, go to the mic, please, because no one can hear you unless you go to the mic. If there's anyone else in the room that has a question, kind of start heading that way. So Eileen, you're first, and then we'll go to people on Zoom. Go ahead, Eileen. What's your question?
Hello. I wanted to ask you about, like, if I'm doing these short stories of a child that's 12 in that area of an age. Some of the stories are have kind of a sad tone, and then there's some that are humorous, and then I have a funeral story. But I don't know I don't know if it's possible to put like childhood experiences, because the way I'm writing it is from a child's perspective, like I'm writing the stories that happened to me at that age. Mm-hmm. So I have some sad ones, but I have some interesting. Some of them are funny, but I don't really know if I can, put that together in a book, because it's kind of like, it's like for instance, the reaction of like quote unquote hippies when they see the vets coming home, and their response. I'm looking at it as a child seeing the vet, not understanding why people aren't respecting. And then I have the paper route, which also deals with many different characters that, a lot of them are just, humorous, very, like, I guess you could say, just characters that on the paper route, like I did it by houses, and all those people are very different. So I don't know if it's possible to put it in one book, or if somebody read it, it's hard to say that it would flow. The only thing that flows is that it's from a child's perspective. So, life is not, a box of chocolates or whatever, it's reality. So, as a 12-year-old, you see good things and you see bad things. But I don't know if that could fit in like a book of like brevity, or memoirs, short stories as a memoir. So in other words, each story has a different perspective. I don't really know how if that would work in a book where it goes from happy stories to intense stories, that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is actually something that is fairly commonly done. So you won't have any problem with it. A couple of things you might want to consider. First of all, you may want to frame it so you have an introduction to it. It says, these are reflections as, who I was at that time, what the world was like at that time, and trying to connect to those stories. So you're framing it to say, this is me looking back. Also, again, the 12-year-old girl, that's that character that we want to fall in love with. So start us in a place where we can fall in love with her. That sets up, what does normal life look like as she's going into this time? And that may be your first story, is just setting up to say, this is who I was, and this is the kind of place that I lived, and these are the things that I loved about it, and then some of the people that I knew. And then I got this paper route and I started to do other things. You can tell those stories within there, because once we know who she is and we have this frame of, this is a summer from the point of view of a 12-year-old, well, we all either were 12 or we have 12-year-old kids. That's the age of my daughter. And life does go up and down. And that's okay. We just want to make sure that people know that because it is this, you're going to have things that are happy and sad because these are real experiences and the real reflection of a summer. Things that you could read to see similar things. What's it called? Wednesday's War. I'll toss that in the chat as well. I can spell. Destiny Wednesday. N-E-S. Wednesday's War, and I can't think of the author off the top of my head, but I'll look it up, is really good. And then Irma Bombeck did this with her humorist, where she would pull together a whole bunch of humorous stories, and she would put those together. Robert Fulham did The Bed Was Burning When I Down on It, and same kind of thing. And almost always they give a little bit of an introduction. And another one is Teresa McDonald. I should have seen it coming when the rabbit died. And hers are all lessons on having a really, really large family. And so her first essay is called The Rabbit Died. And it's all about, when the rabbit died after my pregnancy test, we thought that it was because I was pregnant, but come to find out the rabbit jumped off the end of the table and killed itself. And I should have known that that meant that I was going to be blessed or cursed to have this ginormous family. And then she tells all these stories of her family. And some of them are up and some of them are down, but it's normal because it is the story of a person. And when we're looking at personal essay, we do expect more of that because life isn't just one story. It's lots of little stories, lots of different tones. Then you want to make sure that they're gathered together. So we do get the humorous that offsets the sad, and we get the thoughtful, and then we get the funny. And as you put all those things together, it's going to tell this lovely summer of being in that situation and who you were as that 12-year-old. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Uh-huh. My pleasure. Anybody else? I'm not seeing. All right. So there's our big picture. This is our big foundation. Does the story itself at a large level make sense? And if it doesn't, fix those things first, because fixing all of the commas in the universe will not fix a basic structural problem or a character who's boring or who doesn't make sense. We always have to start by fixing the big things, and then we fix the little things. Otherwise, you end up going through and doing a grammatical test, and you may get rid of an entire chapter after you've done all of that work to make it grammatically correct. So make sure your structure's in place first so you're not repeating yourself in the work that you have to do. All right. I need to change the slide so I don't call it the structural hack, but oh, this is our line and copy edit kind of hack. This is where we are going to get into the grammar that I am sure that all of you love as much as I do. And I can't see everybody, but I expect that there are at least a few people making faces and going, I passed grammar in high school, and now I have never thought about it ever before, ever again. No, whatever. All right. You've got to suck it up, guys. You've got to be able to handle at least basic grammar. And you've got to be able to find your own typos and kick them out. And this is going to go to that whole, as a professional editor, when you go to send me some work, one of the things that I do, and this is very, very common among professional editors, is I'm going to ask you for a sample. And I'm going to ask you for 5,000 to 10,000 words, depending on if it's short story, I'll ask for less than that. Longer pieces, I might ask for a bigger chunk. But I want to see what your writing is like. I also want to see what a mess it is. Because if you give it to me and I can't even get through it because the writing itself is so broken, then either one, I'm not going to edit for you, which is sad, or two, I'm going to charge you more. Because my rates can be as little as a penny a word, really, really clean stuff, all the way up to 8 cents a word if you're going to send me something that's a holy mess. Because I'm willing to do it, but I'm going to make my money off of it if I have to go through and work through your typos and work through your homophones and work through all of these things that are bare bones basics that you really should get rid of before you send it to me. Now, if you're going to someone like an agent, having a really messy manuscript is a reason for rejection. They can love your manuscript, but same thing. If they're going to have to do a whole lot of work to get the actual formation of sentences and everything into a structure that they could send forward in order to sell the manuscript, They always have to do this math that says if you have two manuscripts that are equal in interest, you like both of the stories, and this one's a mess, and this one is very clean as far as grammatical and all of the structure go, they're going to take this one. Even if this one is actually even better, they're going to take the one that is going to be easy to clean up, easy to work with, but they're going to be able to pitch faster. So you are not doing yourself any favors by sending in manuscripts where you haven't gone through and done your best, where you haven't worked with other people, because sometimes you can't see your own stuff, and we'll talk about that. Sometimes you can't, and you do need to get other people's eyes on it to help you find these things. I do it all the time. Editors should never edit their own manuscripts we give to somebody else. But cleaner manuscripts, you're going to have higher acceptance rates. You're going to have much, much less price going out when you're talking about an editor. It's worth learning to do. So the first thing we're going to talk about is typos and grammar. You can get a lot of help from the software that you use to write things with. If you're writing longhand, eventually you're typing it in because very few places accept longhand essays anymore. It's kind of cool. I do like working with pen and pencil, but unfortunately, nobody is going to just put that up. I do have to type it sooner or later. So you want to look for typos. You want to look for basic grammatical mistakes. And your software will often help you. You'll get that nice squiggly red line that says you probably spelled this wrong. Always check those. Do not just universally believe them. Because as we'll talk about on another slide, computers are stupid sometimes, and the suggestions they make are not always correct. So it's check and see what they're suggesting and see if that's what you really mean. Because if you write in fantasy like I do, I get so many red squiggles because Word has no idea how to deal with fantasy words. And it will tell me these are all wrong. And I'm like, nope, I have to build a new dictionary for every series that says, here's all the character names. Here's the place names. Here's the weird magic that I've come up with. Please stop giving me the red squiggles. They're not helping anymore. But I do want it to catch the times that I have fat fingered and changed the into the or the into TEH or any of those other things that help. So you want to go through and look for those obvious typos, obvious grammatical mistakes. You want to go through and look for repetition. I'm going to say it again. Go through and look for repetition. It is amazing how sometimes we will repeat ourselves multiple times within a paragraph. Sometimes that is on purpose because you are trying to add emphasis, but unless you are doing it on purpose, it's basically your brain going, well, did I say that already? I'll just say it again one more time just to make sure it's in there. And the reader doesn't need it. If you've told the reader once the cat was gray and had big yellow eyes, you probably don't need to mention that again until maybe once or twice, depending on the length of the essay. But you don't have to do it in every paragraph. We don't have to be reminded of those things. We're very good at keeping track of the gray cat, yellow eyes. We got it. So watch for repetition. See if you can take it out and make sentences and paragraphs that flow and are much easier to read. Beware of cliches. Cliches are interesting because when they are used well, they can be very, very well placed and they can push something home. Terry Pratchett is the king of using cliches in an amazing way. His reading is fantastic. He writes, it's fantasy, but it's fantasy that is also political satire, and it's hysterical. And he plays on cliches in an amazing way, but you can tell it's always very, very intentional. When you're relying on cliches just because you can't think of anything else to say, believe me, you are so much smarter than that, and you are a much better author than those cliches deserve. Go through, pull out the cliches, write something better, because you can totally do it. Cliches is just something we tend to fall back on if we're not using them in a very purposeful manner. Watch your dialogue tags. Now, first of all, learn to properly punctuate dialogue tags. There are 1,000,001 really great resources. One of my favorite ones online is Grammar Girl, and she has a nice page that says, this is how you punctuate this kind of dialogue. This is how you punctuate this kind of dialogue, and this is where the tags go. Okay, so you want to make sure that those tags make sense. You also want to look at your dialogue tags and decide how you're going to do it. Now, there are a lot of different ways that people think about dialogue tags, and you can get into all sorts of arguments on the internet because that's a really great use of our time when we're procrastinating other things. And some people will say, said is dead, do something interesting and all that kind of thing. And other people say, use only said and past because they're invisible. And it's true. What you have to think about is, first of all, when is the dialogue tag drawing more attention to itself than the dialogue? Okay. In Harry Potter, there is a point where Hermione says something and it says, Hermione ejaculated. And that's the dialogue tag. And I had to explain what that word meant to my child. And I did not appreciate having to explain why it was used in this way and why all the adults in the room were snickering. That's not a real great way to say she said something in a very excited, loud fashion. Because it does cause certain stops with the reader's head. I was not thinking about what she said. I was thinking about how it was tagged. Because it was like, oh, hey, there's a choice. So you want to think about that. One of the things that you can do, and this is very, very popular in more modern writing, is simply to get rid of the dialogue tags and to put in action tags, because you don't want what we call two heads in a white room. And Calvin and Hobbes did a whole thing on this with Calvin and Hobbes talking to each other, and it's dialogue, 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 da, 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 and it never gets tagged because people will get lost. But at the same time, you can say, let's see, the dog is on the prowl. He turned around and filled the dog's food. So you're putting action to it instead of specifically saying said, because we know that the speaker said it. Then we can tie it to their action in order to make sure that we know who's the one doing the talking. So look at those different options and see what works. Also consider that these days, in a lot of ways, we're also writing for audio. Even if you don't have your book professionally narrated, there are a lot of people who use their phones, their Kindles, whatever other electronic device. They will use a text-to-speech function in order to listen to the story. So if you overuse said, even though it's invisible to us when we're reading to the eye, it's not invisible to the ear. And so if everyone is, he said, she said, he said, she said, well, when you listen to that, it's very distracting. So you also have to think, as you're doing some of these things, if this becomes an audiobook or if somebody's listening to it through their phone, what's going to keep pulling itself out? We don't want the words to draw more attention to them than the story that they're telling. So that's things that we want to do when we're dealing with dialogue in particular. And we use dialogue in all sorts of things, creative nonfiction and in fictional life. We want to look for filler words. This is the, it's your brain going, or as I say, It's your brain going, well, I don't know what goes here, so I'm going to say a little bit. I'm going to say just. I'm going to say once. I'm going to say that. I'm going to say, and these are words, they're not actually structurally necessary. They're not grammatically necessary. And they start to become very repetitive. You notice a lot of these things we look for all tie together. So you want to look for filler words. And there's lots of lists online for filler words. Again, this is a search and consider, because sometimes it is exactly the right filler word and it belongs there. Other times it's just your brain taking a break as you're writing. And you can do something stronger, or you can do something you just don't need it at all. So I keep a list for myself, and I start with the general filler words, and then we all have favorites. We all do. We all have those things that we lean on, and they show up in our work all the time, and other people read it and they'll go, do you know that you say a lot, a lot? This is me. I love a lot. A lot is my favorite word. She'll do this a lot, and she'll do that a lot. And my editor always goes, do you go through and remove all the a lots? Oh, will you go and do that before you send it to me? Yes. So keep a list of your own words, the things that you find yourself leaning on, and then do a search and consider. So search, see if it actually belongs, and if it doesn't, get rid of it. This goes also when we're talking about adverbs and modifiers. Adverbs generally are ly verbs. There are others that fall into this category, but that's the one that gets beaten on. A lot of people say that ly adverbs and modifiers should be used a lot like anchovies on pizza, which is sparingly or not at all. Really good ly words in the right place are fantastic, though. You will never find me saying that any of these rules are never, ever do this, because I can always tell you a place where I've had a client or myself or somebody I've read who has done it brilliantly, breaking all of the rules. So we don't say never, but we do say, watch for those lys, watch for modifiers that may not be there. And that ties into your strong verbs, because a strong verb is to say, if you say, you're a big jerk, she said angrily. That's very different than, "You're a big jerk," she shouted. Shouting is a strong verb, and it tells you a whole lot about who they are. And if you say, "You're a big jerk," she shouted and punched him in the face. Well, now we have the shouting going on, which tells you about how she's doing it. An action that goes with it that shows there's a whole lot of emotional background in this "you're a big jerk." And that's very different from somebody who's heartbroken and might say, "You're a big jerk," he whispered. Or she turned away and cried. Things happened there. And those ly verbs are not giving you strong verbs. Ly is when you are not committing to the verb. And I want you as writers to commit to the verb. Give us those strong verbs. Let the emotion come through. And sometimes as writers, we're afraid to say, "I'm going to have these characters be really emotional." Or especially if we're writing personal essay, there's a vulnerability in strong verbs. In saying, "I was furious," over "I was angry," or "I did something angrily." Furious is a different thing. And sometimes we back off because is furious too much? And almost never is it too much. We want those strong verbs. Those strong verbs emotionally take people places, and they will connect with your stories because of that strength. Then you want to look at tense shifts and point of view shifts. So this is, are you switching from past to present, and you're not doing it on purpose? So there are places where people say, "I'm doing this section in past," and then the flashbacks are all in present, or vice versa. And if there's a routine to it and you're doing it, that's fantastic. But otherwise, you need to watch for the shifts, because some people just slide in and out of past and present tense, and it's very confusing to the reader. So are you using those present verbs, I see something, or are you going to the past, I saw something? What's the direction you want to tell it from? Same thing with point of view. Is it first person, "I did this"? Is it third person, "Diana did this"? Is it second person? And second person does get used particularly in essay. So like teaching books, I have a book we'll talk about at the end. I talk to the reader. And so I say, "You will want to do this, that, and the other. You may want to consider this." That's second person because I'm talking to you, the reader. We don't see it as much in other things, but we do see it in nonfiction. And I don't want to shift in and out of that unless it's very specific as to, in the introduction, I say "I," and then once we start the book, I'm talking to you, the reader, so it becomes second person. Shifts always need to be intentional. Beginning and starting, these are one of my favorites, because a lot of people will say, "And it began to rain." Well, that's nice, but why isn't it, "It stormed, it opened, and the rain fell down"? Again, it's strength. And also, we don't generally begin or start something unless there is an interrupt. So if I say, "He leaned in and began to kiss her," well, why isn't he just kissing her? Mitt, kiss her. Now, it's different if I say, "He began to kiss her and she punched him in the nose," going back to the violence and romance, because that has now been stopped. Same kind of thing. If he starts towards the door, I expect something to stop him from getting to the door, because you're telling me that he starts, and otherwise you should just say, "He walked out the door." Commit to the verb. But otherwise it's, "He started towards the door and he tripped on the carpet." He started towards the door, but the dog ran in. So there's an interrupt that is something we expect when something has beginning or started. Otherwise, remove those, commit to the verb, and keep your pace moving. These are all things that slow down pace, and it can make it so that it feels like your writing is dragging. Then you want to look at your general formatting. Do you have lots of choppy little sentences? Do you have really long sentences? Do you have some combination of them? What does that formatting do to your pacing? Because visually, you're going to have readers who look at it and the formatting tells them something. If you read the Twilight books, in the second book, there's a section where Bella is in deep depression because Edward, her love, has gone somewhere else. There are several chapters that it's one word and it's the month. And it says, October, November, December. That's 3 chapters worth of stuff. And it tells you so much because it's one word and a blank page. And a blank page already fills in for the reader certain things. Poetry does this a lot. where you may use the shape of the poem and the way that the white space works around it to give people a certain feeling. There's a book that I just read to my grandson, and there's little boys and they're digging down through the earth. And so where they put the words and format it within the pictures makes you feel like you're going down, down, down. And it's very, very effective. So you do want to think about the formatting. In the end, you'll work with your publisher, you would work with your formatter to get that final formatting. But when you're going through and doing this edit, you want to think about that formatting and go, do I want a lot of white space here? Or do I need to change the length of some of the sentences so that my paragraphs are a little bit more packed so that it looks consistent? Because if it doesn't, it can throw readers off. And then we get into consistency is absolutely king. So if you decide, for example, forward with an S on the end, forward without an S on the end, they are both grammatically correct. One is more traditionally British, with the S on the end is more traditionally British English, and with the S not on the end is more traditionally American English. You need to decide which one you're going to do and then just commit to it through the entire thing. This happens a lot in English with words like that. Is it gray AY or gray EY? I like gray EY for some reason. It just looks better to my brain. So I always make sure it's gray EY, and then I make a note when it goes to my editor. I've chosen to spell gray this way. It will always be this way. This can also happen if you're saying, like, I have a friend who's from Australia. So we always put a note in the front of her books that say all of the punctuation, all of the spelling and stuff is going to be by Australian English. And then we make sure it's consistent all the way through. So that's a big thing is you can even choose to break these rules, but when you do, consistently break them. So if you're always going to do something, always do it, but don't go back and forth because it catches the reader's eye. And now it looks like a mistake instead of looking intentional. And then really helpful readers who think that they're helping you go to Amazon and they report that you have typos when you didn't have typos, and now you have to deal with those reports and it's not fun. So there are others that are good things to look for in this structural. And you can find those, like I say, there are 1,000,001 lists that say also check for this. It's little things like, is it AM or A period, M period? Again, both correct, but it's got to be consistent. I have a book that has a lot more of these in it, so I'll talk about that later. But you can find a lot of lists online of things to look for, and you just want to make sure it's consistent, it's easy to read, it invites the reader to come in and to stay with you and to pay more attention to the story you're telling or the information that you're teaching than the words you're using to do it with. Because when the words pull attention to themselves, they pull your reader out of the depth of the reading, and now they're paying attention to exactly what is the words doing instead of the story that you want them to get. All right, this is another good break point. I can see there's chatter in the chat, but I don't know if there's any questions, so let's make questions here.
Okay, we'll take some questions. Anyone on Zoom have a question? Go ahead and unmute and ask your question. Nobody?
Yeah, I've got a question.
Hi, Steve.
Hi. Sorry. So I was wondering if our guest could chat about the utility of having a style sheet, like what one is and why it might be useful for like a particular project. I just thought that that's something I use and other people should know about that thing.
Absolutely. I love style sheets. They do come up here, but this is a really good place to talk about it. So a style sheet is going to come from one of two sources. You either create your own style sheet, or if you're going to work with a publisher, they will probably, in most cases, provide you with a style sheet. And what a style sheet does is exactly what I was just talking about, where you make the decision that says, every time this comes up, this is how it's going to be. So it's always going to be capitalized and italics. And I'm going to always do that. So you create a sheet that says, in this book, in this series, this is always how we do it. So I'm always going to use hanging indents as a formatting thing. Or I'm always going to use italics when it's a thought. I'm going to create, there's maybe text messages. Text messages is a really funny thing. As technology has changed, everybody goes, how do you write people commenting by text? And you see it done a million different ways. And none of them are wrong because there isn't any consistent thing. The Chicago Manual of Style does not have a listing for how you write text messages, which makes me sad sometimes because I'd like at least a suggestion. So you're going to say, in my style guide, if it starts with an asterisk and has the thing and stops with an asterisk, that's how I'm going to do text messages. And I'm going to put them on different sides of the screen. So they'll be right hand justified, left hand justified, right hand justified, left hand justified. Or I'm going to actually create them into graphics, and it'll be graphics that do that kind of thing. But that style sheet, like Steve says, that's fantastic, because then if you forget anything, you can go back to it, especially as you're writing series. Because when you get to book 8 in the series and you're trying to remember, how do I hyphenate bird's eye view? Where are those kinds of things, you can go back and it will always have that list that says, this is how each of these things are done. This is how I want to consistently do it. If you're working with a professional editor, I do always ask my clients if they have a style sheet that they've created. And then I will take that style sheet and I will add to it anything that I notice going through that I can see this is going to be a problem, not a problem, but something we should think about in future books. So I will add a section to their style sheet to say, I think we should also add these things to your style sheet, because when we get to book 2, I know it's going to be important and I'm going to forget. Style sheets help your brain so that there's so much we're keeping in a writer's brain. We want to make sure to put down anything we can in writing. So it's fantastic. Right. Other questions?
We do have another question in the chat. Someone asked, it's iPhone 2. I'm not sure who that is. Do you want to unmute and ask your question, or do you want me to read your question? Okay, I will go ahead and read it. How do you show vocal inflection? Bold, underline, or italics? And then they had an additional, I got criticized for using double quotation marks.
Yeah, double quotation marks has very specific usage, and also because of the way that some of the formatting code works, if you take something that has double quotation marks and I feed it into my formatting program absolutely loses its clout. And then I have to go and figure out what happened. So double quotes are generally not a good way to do it. Typically, with vocal inflection, you see either bold or italics. And this goes back to the style sheet thing. So if you're working with a press, they'll tell you when we have inflection or when we have certain things, we're always going to use italics or we're always going to use bold. Sometimes they use a slightly different font. So that's another option, is I've seen people that it'll go through, and when we get to a point that there's a particular kind of inflection, or if they're using, for example, a different language, then they'll put that language in italics and it's a slightly smaller font, or it's a sans serif font when everything else is a serif. So you can do that kind of thing. Visually, that really pulls someone out of the story, so you have to make sure that it works when you do that. But more likely, you get underline is not very common. I've seen it occasionally. It's a much older style to use underline. But most of the time, they use either italics, bold and italics, or you change the font slightly in order to draw that attention. But very rarely is it going to be double italic or double quotes or double quotes and single quotes, because those all have their own things that you're supposed to do. For example, if you're quoting something within a quote, that's where you're supposed to use single quotes. So if you're using it otherwise, then it makes people confused. So I hope that helps, but we're moving away from that kind of confusion. You generally want to stick with italics and bold.
Any other questions in the room or on Zoom? Okay, moving on.
Yeah, Steve's got in there, CMOS says italics, but how styles may differ, and that's true. CMOS is the Chicago Manual of Style. It is the big daddy standard for fiction. It is not the big daddy standard for nonfiction. With nonfiction, you may use MLA, you may use APA, and then there's also every university has some of its own style guides and things like that. So you want to use what's appropriate. And again, the thing that I will come back to, and I have a whole slide that says this, but we also have to say that author voice and clarity trump rules. So sometimes the technical rule will be always use this, but it will make it so that it doesn't work for your author voice or it's breaking something else. And in that case, I always lean into author voice. So like there's a rule not to start sentences with gerunds, which are ing words. And so it'll say, fleetingly, he blah, 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 blah. And that's one of those things that CMOS and other places tell you generally not to do. But I had a client who used them so brilliantly, and it was such a strong point of his author voice that we threw that rule right out the door. And we stuck with what he was doing because the way that it made his work flow was so perfect for his author voice that it would have destroyed his voice to make it grammatically correct. So sometimes we do take the rules and we say, this doesn't work, but you need to understand the rules so that you know when you're breaking them and that you're doing it on purpose so that it fulfills what you want to get out of your author voice and out of your final product. All right, anyone else before we scoot on? Is it incorrect to use commas in poetry? Absolutely not. You can use poetry. You can use commas in poetry in a lot of places. It's going to depend on the kind of poetry. It's going to depend on the pattern of the stanzas. But yes, you see commas in poetry all the time. A comma means a slight breath. It means a little bit of a break. Poetry really relies on the beat and how you're going to read it. So knowing whether it's a full stop, whether it's a period, or whether it's a comma, and how much of a break you want someone to take, absolutely critical in poetry. So it is not incorrect. You might have some people who tell you otherwise, but I will always argue that it is valid to use all of your different punctuation marks in poetry as long as you know what it is that they're supposed to do, what it is it's telling how it's telling the reader to read that poem. Because otherwise you get poems that they start to run on together for a long, long time, and you lose the beat and the beauty that is poetry if you can't break those things up. So that's my argument there.
Terrific. Thank you.
I will always argue that. And then there's a for the newbies, the Chicago Manual Style is a comprehensive guide to formatting, citation, etc. It is the gold standard. It is amazing. I have 4 of them because I've been in the industry that long. Every year, Chicago does updates, and they'll put that out on their website, and they'll tell you things like, this is the year that we decided that internet is no longer a proper noun, and now it is lowercase unless you're referring to it in a very specific way, and they'll give you all those rules. So you can sign up, and there's a subscription for the Chicago Manual Style. You'll see a lot of us refer to it. If you buy the book, it's about somewhere between 2.5 and 3 inches big, nice hardbound, hefty book. It's the kind of thing you could use for home defense. If anybody ever breaks into my house, I'm just going to assault them with my Chicago Manual Style and run away, because you could kill somebody with that thing because it is huge, but it's amazing, and it's a big, bright orange book, and having them all on my shelf makes me very happy. I also have to put them down on the bottom shelf because they're really heavy, but it's a great resource to have on hand, and we'll have a whole page on other resources that I recommend. All right, scooting right along here. Come on, move to the next slide, please. All right, this is one of my favorite things that I think you need to do. And this comes after you've put your head down and you've looked at structure and you've looked at the format and you've looked at all these kinds of things. You've done very, very technical things to yourself. Well, now, like my little hats here, you need to go to being a reader hat, to being a party hat, where now you're just going to read it for the sheer joy of reading, right? And you're going to read your own work as a reader and say, is this an interesting interesting essay? Does it catch my attention? Am I having fun? Do I enjoy reading it? Do I want to know what happens next? If I were to stop in the middle of my own chapter, would I be irritated with myself? Do you want to read more from you? Because if you don't want to read your own stuff, then why does anybody want to read your own stuff, right? We write first for ourselves and then for everybody else out there. So if you don't want to read your own stuff, then please don't give it to me as a reader. I want to believe, I want to know that the author loved what they were doing. And I have read stuff across the board, different genres, different everything else. And there are some things when you read it, you know the author was there, and it is so powerful to read and so fun to read, and so whatever emotion they have, because I want to go on that journey with them because they obviously had a great time going on this journey themselves, right? And then there's other stuff that I read and it's like, I'm phoning this in because my English teacher said I have to write an essay on this thing and I hate it. Your readers can tell. Your readers can tell when you are not engaged. And so you want to be engaged with your own reading, your own work. Now, sometimes in order to do this, sometimes you must take the thing that you have done all the shiny stuff on, you've done the grammar checks, and you must put it in a drawer and let your brain disconnect from it from a little bit. Sometimes a couple of days, some people need a couple of weeks before you can go back and look at it from this completely different point of view. Because sometimes going right into that reader view after you've just fought with, am I going to use this verb or that verb? Sometimes your brain just won't make that switch. And you have to go and do something else and let it sit. And then when you come back, you can read it as a reader. And that really helps because I'll be honest, sometimes when you're doing the grammatical part of it, you will read stuff and you will go, what drunk monkey wrote this? I'm pretty sure the drunk monkey was me, and it is the worst thing that has ever been written ever before, and everyone's going to hate it, and I'm never going to sell any copies, and I'm never writing again, and you stomp out and you go eat ice cream. This happens. We all go through this stage where we hate our manuscript. And sometimes you need that distance for a day or two. My husband will take manuscripts away from me. He's like, you can't work on this anymore. Go do something else. Go be creative. Go do something, work on your crocheting, and then come back to it. And then I'll come back to it a little bit later, and I'll start reading and go, that right there, that's a really nice turn of phrase. And this part over here, this is really funny. I'm funny. And you'll start to find, where's the joy in this? And you go, yeah, maybe there's still a few things to fix, but I love my manuscript. I love this story that I told. I love this part here, and I know this inside joke. And so that reader hat is really important because it's what keeps the passion in your manuscript after you've gone through and tried to fix all of the technical stuff. Because the technicality is important. It is so important. But sometimes it hurts your heart a little bit. And so this is going back to the heart part of it. Am I telling the story I want to tell? Is this a story that I can step behind and say, I'm so proud of this and I'm so glad that I'm going to put my name on it? That's the reader hat. And it's really important. All right. Let me check the chat here real quick. Doing just fine. All right. So moving on, some helpful methods for being able to see the different things that you need to do as you're self-editing. The first one is to print out a hard copy. It's kind of an old school way to do it, but by forcing yourself to go from a digital medium to a physical medium, it kicks it. These are all about making your brain look at it in a different way. And so when you print out that hard copy, you often look at it in a different way, and you can go to a different place. Joanna Penn, who writes amazing thrillers and some really, really good author help books, she says there's a little cafe down the street, and anytime that she's editing, she prints it all out, takes her red pen, and goes to the cafe. And there's a certain drink that she gets that is her editing drink, and she puts on editor brain, and she drinks her drink, and she redlines her own copy. So printing out a hard copy, it can be a little bit expensive because ink and paper and what have you, but it's a really good way to shift into that editorial mode. Now I'm looking for these things. If you want to stay digital, you can change the font style and the size. I will argue that this is the only use for Comic Sans that I will ever accept because Comic Sans became very, very overused and now I have a grudge. But it is one of those that it's so different, but still easily readable that your brain shifts and goes, oh, I now notice that it says off instead of. And it's particularly helpful for things like that where it is a word. It's not like it's the wrong, like it's not a word, but it's not the correct word. It's on instead of. Things that when we read, we tend to read in shapes. And so if the shape of two things is really, really close, especially if we're speed reading, if we're reading quickly, we won't even notice that it's the wrong word because it's the right shape. And when you change the font style and size, your brain has to stop and read every single letter. And so it stops and it goes, wait, that is off and it should be up. It'll help you to find those little errors. You can read the piece backwards. Now, I do not mean to try to read the words backwards because that would be really confusing. But you can read the sentences backwards or you can read paragraphs backwards. This is how my copy editor reads because she says, I don't care about your story. I just care about your words. She is very much, I'm going to get the grammar right and the hyphenation and everything else. So to not get caught up in the story, she starts at the end. She reads a sentence at a time backwards and she analyzes every sentence, every word and makes sure that it's all grammatically correct. And because she's reading backwards, she can't get sucked into the story. Instead, she can focus only on the words. So for a technical read, reading backwards is an amazing way to find those things. You can read the book aloud. When you're reading to read it out loud, you have to read every word. You don't skip them. And sometimes if you find there's a word you're always skipping when you read it out loud, that means it doesn't need to be in the sentence anyway. So it can be a good way to identify repetition. It can be a good way to identify things that need to go out. And it can be a good way to identify things that need to go in or things that are awkward to read. I'll do this for clients of mine where I'll say, okay, I read this dialogue out loud and this sentence, and this sentence tripped me up every single time. So they're all technically correct, but you might want to look at them for the fact that they're awkward. It's hard to say. There's too much alliteration. There's not enough alliteration. There's something about it that's awkward. Sometimes you need somebody else to read the book to you. You can do this through an app. You can do this through, I have a lovely husband that will sometimes, like I say, he's very supportive of my career. And occasionally he is a great reader with all these voices. I want him to do my audiobooks. We're working on it. And I will hand him a thing and say, I'm going to close my eyes and I need you to read this to me. And as he reads it to me, I can visualize in a very different way what it is that I've created, and I can identify breaks in structure. He can identify, hey, this word is wrong, or I'll hear it and go, well, that's not right. So sometimes it's listening through your ears to go, oh, my eyes are deceiving me. This needs to change. Or again, this is brilliant and I love it more than anything. And you should at least multiple times through your own work go, this is brilliant and I love it more than anything. It's okay to feel that way. We do not have to be starving artists and we do not have to hate our own work. We will have times we have struggles with it, but you should feel like you're brilliant sometimes because it's good for you. So these are things you can do to really help as we go through this editorial process so that you're not just staring at the screen and having your eyes fall out. All right. Any questions before I move on to my last couple of things? We're past the chunky bits. All right, let me check the chat here. Backwards. Yeah, Michelle says, in my science fiction writers critique group, we don't allow the author to read their pages. Another member reads it out loud, forces the writer to hear it. Yep, that's absolutely. Sometimes you got to hear it through your ears to know what it is that you're actually doing. Right. This is one of my favorite slides because I hear it all the time. Can't you just edit as you go? Why is it that you're making me go back to the beginning and start and do the things and all that kind of stuff? No, you can't, okay? I will actually amend that just a little bit to say there are things you can do as you go, and you should, because that will produce cleaner first drafts. But you have to be careful because the problem that you get with edit as you go, and I have worked with many, many authors who have been stuck in this, is that they go, I have written chapter 1. Now I'm going to go back and edit chapter 1. Now I'm going to go back and edit chapter 1 again. And then I went to a conference and I learned about this new skill. So I think I'll go back and edit chapter 1 one more time. And now you have gone through chapter 1 27 times. You have spent the last 6 months on it, and you have not moved on to chapter 2. Editorial mind can trap you in critical voice, which says it's never good enough. And so you just edit it and edit and edit and edit and edit. And when you do that, you lose your author voice and you start to lose the joy of the whole thing. And the chapter that you have by the time you've gone through it 27 times is very different than when you started. So you can lose the emotional voice. You can lose all sorts of things. And now the chapter 2 that you plan to write doesn't go with this chapter 1 because it's now a brand new beast. So I tell you, if you want to edit as you go, and this I do recommend, is to do what's called cycling. And this is how I write. This is how a lot of people that I know write. Dean Wesley Smith is the one who introduced this to me and to several others, is you say, today I wrote this, blah, 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 blah. Here are 4 wonderful pages I wrote. Tomorrow when I go to do my writing, I can read back over those last 4 pages, not the pages before them, not those, the last 4 pages that I wrote, because that's getting my brain back into where I am in the story, and I can fix any minor things that I need to as I go forward. And then after I've done that pass, I have to move on and write 4 more, or whatever it is you're writing per day. So you're making these little loops where you do get some editing done, but you're continuing forward. Now, occasionally, you will get 50,000 words through a story and figure out that you have fundamentally broken something and you need to fix it now. That happens, but it's rarer than you think it is. And learning to do little cycles, or to say I'm finishing and then coming back and starting again, gets you into good habits about finishing work. You cannot put out something that isn't finished. You cannot edit a blank page. I can't edit a blank page for you. The words have to go down on the paper, and then you have to figure out how to work forward. But do not get caught in editing loops, because I think somebody mentioned 35 years to write a book. That's part of what happens is when you spend so much time editing and other things going on. And I want to read your books. I want to get them in less than 35 years each. It kind of narrows how many books we can get out. So when you talk about people, you see people who are putting out a book a month, who are putting out really, really quick things. It's because they learn to keep their editorial mode really, really tight. A lot of them do the cycling editing as they go. They write ahead of time. They're really, really tight with these kinds of things, and they don't let themselves get caught up in the critical voice of it, but it's moved forward so that we can keep getting things moving. And everybody's different. You don't have to put out a book a month, but I'm just saying you very much can get into those cycles, but you have to teach yourself to do it. All right, like we talked, does all of this apply to nonfiction? It does. The process of going from big picture to detail, but instead of the character arcs, you're going to look at logical arcs, supporting statements, thesis, all that kind of thing. Final steps with nonfiction will include applying appropriate style guides. So knowing if there's a citation and it's MLA, this is where the parentheses go, this is the information that goes in the parentheses, all those things, and you must do a proper bibliography. Please, please do not send me or any other editor a nonfiction thing where you have not done your own bibliography. I will tell you that most editors will charge you additional fees if they have to put together your bibliography. Okay, I charge $55 an hour if I have to research and do your own and do your bibliography for you, because I don't want to do it. I don't know which things you went to. You cited it anyway, so just keep track of your citations and put the bibliography in. I am fine to edit it, because most people, if an editor takes on your nonfiction, they will probably ask you which style guide you're using, and then they can edit your bibliography properly to that style guide. We all know how to do it, but we're not going to create the bibliography out of whole cloth for you without charging you for it, because it's a lot of work. All right. Okay, this is a big one, and I'm going to address it. People feel lots of different ways about AI. However you feel about it is completely and utterly valid. But we also can't ignore that it is out there and that it is a part of a lot of the features that we use. And so you have to kind of think about, where your comfort lies and understanding this. So there are some really great software options for helping you in your self-editing. I have used everything on this list: Grammarly Pro, Pro Writing Aids. Spell check is just word spell check, which has been around for a million years. Hemingway, ChatGPT, AutoCrit. I've used all of these. There are more. The list of things that could potentially help you is large and in charge and immense. I mention these ones simply because I've used them, so I can say they work. They all work in different ways. If it's something you want to do, learn the program. Always keep in mind that computers are very, very literal. Do not accept their suggestions wholesale, because they do funky things. They often don't understand what it is you're going for, and they know nothing about things like author voice. They are trying to correct your manuscript to a set of rules that they've been given. And again, that can suck your author voice out. You can run into problems like if you're writing dialogue is very often not grammatically correct, because we don't talk that way. I don't know very many people who speak in a very grammatically correct fashion. I only do it when I really think about it, and usually for presentations, because I'm thinking about how am I presenting this? Is it particularly clear? But like when I write dialogue for my teenagers never speak in a grammatically correct fashion. There's there's dudes, there's whatever. You'll get little snippets of things that are not complete sentences and don't go together. And when you give it to Pro Writing Aid will have an absolute fit, because it's like, all of this is grammatically incorrect. Don't let it fix it. Your teenagers should talk that way because that's what teenagers sound like. A 12-year-old girl is not going to always speak in a grammatically correct fashion. Don't let Pro Writing Aid make her speak grammatically correct. So you want to use these where they're good for you, but do not just accept them. The computers don't know. And if you're writing romance, just as a note here, put the sex scenes through because you want to laugh. Do not put the sex scenes through because the computer has any idea how human sexuality works. Because I've read a couple of scenes and I'm like, people don't bend that way. That is not how that works. And they don't get the emotion right because they don't know anything about emotion either. So use things. It's a very good idea to help with your process, to help make your process smooth, to make you feel like you're really in good shape to send to a pro editor or to an agent or an editor, to have the computer give you that backup. But it's always see what they say, consider whether it's right for you or not. Often it isn't. All right, exceptions to the rules. We've talked about lots of rules, but rules are more like the pirate code in action. Fix the obnoxious typos. Everything else, search and consider. What makes your writing stronger? What makes the character voice and the author intent work? Especially in fiction, voice trumps perfect grammar. And put it into your style sheet so that the next person you pass it on to will know, you know that you're breaking the rules, you're doing it on purpose because you are just a rebel pirate that way. Okay? This is important because if everything is always by the rules, it all becomes very boring very quickly. All right, here are some of my very, very favorite references that you can use. Self-Editing for Authors is a book, which is very, very good. The Merriam-Webster Dictionary. Choose a dictionary. Choose your favorite one, but that's what you're going to consistently use. So, for example, dictionaries are a great place to find hyphenation rules, but what Merriam-Webster hyphenates and what Oxford hyphenates, very different. Sometimes even the definitions of words are different between Merriam-Webster and Oxford. So when I work with clients, I always ask them, which dictionary did you use? Because Merriam-Webster is my go-to. And if they've used Oxford or they've used something else, I will double check some of the things before I put final edits in, because sometimes the dictionaries don't align. But you should have a favorite dictionary that you can say, this is what my definitions are pulled from. This is what my hyphenations are pulled from. This is what all those kinds of accents, diacritical marks, a lot of those are different from dictionary to dictionary. And so you need to know what you're doing so it can be consistent. Grammar Girl is an amazing resource. She has an online site. She also has a couple of books. Conan the Grammarian. I discovered Conan about, I guess it's been 15 years ago now. My son gave me Conan the Grammarian for a Christmas present. It is one of the best things that a teenage boy has ever come up with to give somebody. It's a nice grammar book, but it's all told from the point of view of Conan. And so, you know, he talks about how Conan sometimes speaks this way because Conan is trying to get through the third person point of view self thing. So it's fun grammar. If you're going to have to read a grammar book anyway, it may as well be a fun grammar book. The one I have now is a little bit out of date. I'm waiting to see if they're going to put out another one. It is still a great reference. The Emotional Thesaurus, there are many, many books in these, and they have an Emotional Thesaurus for various genres, so you can get one that's specific to your genre or your problems. They help you a lot with understanding how do we do emotion, how do we do action, how do we make some of those things work. These are great resources. And then the Chicago Manual of Style, you don't have to own Chicago, okay? Your editor should. You should absolutely be able to ask your editor if they use Chicago. What references are they using? Because you can Google and say plus CMOS on it, and they'll give you back the references. But if you have a real question, that's what the standard is. And then in nonfiction, you get the APA style for Associated Press, you get MLA, you get other of those, and you want to use whatever's appropriate for the press that you're working with. Just my one little pitch here, Steps to Self-Editing is my book. It's 99 cents on Amazon. I will keep it at 99 cents forever because the whole point is to make it very, very accessible. It's a little bit more than that for the printed copy because I have to pay Amazon there, but they want money for everything. But that has everything that's in this presentation, plus a bunch of extra things that I don't have enough time for, because if we tried to do the entire book, it takes about 8 hours. So, and it's a lot to try to remember. So that exists. It's on Amazon. Take it as you will.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jana. We're right up against the time envelope here, but does anyone have a really specific, relevant question for Jana? Not a comment, Don't weigh in on something, just an actual question. Anybody? Okay. Once again, Jana, thank you so much. Can you unshare the screen so that they can see
yes,
everything else going on? That'd be great.
Click the stop share. There we go. And feel free to reach out. That's the other thing is I am happy to be a resource for you. I don't start charging until you're taking hours and hours of my time. But if you have a question or a quick, can you look at this? You can get to me through editor at Opal Kingdom Press, and I am happy to help with anything that you've got going on. All right, back to you.
You can also see her at Writers Cantina in Salt Lake City in July. You'll be presenting again, I assume. One of our members.
I will be presenting there and Superstars in February.
Excellent, excellent. One of our members last year presented also at Cantina, Bing Bruce, who wrote the Podcasting for Writers. He presented there as well, and I attended. Liam attended. Lynette, Montana attended. A lot of us went to Utah, and it's a great conference. I've gone 3 years in a row. Highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. Next month, we have Jonathan Mayberry live in the room. He's driving up from San Diego, so that'll be exciting. If you don't know who he is, he's a New York Times bestselling author. He's written lots and lots of books, like 50 some odd, has over 200 published short stories, Bram Stoker Award winner. It goes on and on, all kinds of awards, and a really, really good educator. He genuinely cares about helping people. He is going to be talking about world building. World building is important no matter what sort of writing that you're doing. Even if you're doing a contemporary set in the real world, you still have to build that world on the page. So in the room, it's a great opportunity. If you happen to have his books and you want to sign it, bring them along. That's on February 21st, third Saturday in this room again. Once again, on volunteers, we always are happy for that. If you haven't joined, we'd love to have you as a member. Again, it's not required in order to participate. Our job is to help uplift writers, but if you help keep us doing what we do. We just had a microphone go out. We got to buy a new microphone. So your donation to join would be much appreciated. And that's it. We're going to adjourn for lunch. Thank you again, Jana. You were wonderful.